The Gospel of Peter was banned for revealing too much. Everyone thinks they know the story of Jesus' resurrection. It's the foundation of Christian faith, a story that's been told for 2,000 years. But what if the version we all know is missing its wildest, most radical parts? What if there was another gospel, one claiming to be written by the Apostle Peter himself, that was so explosive, so strange, it had to be suppressed? A gospel that shows us a version of the resurrection that includes a talking cross and names the Roman officer guarding Christ's tomb. This is the story of the Gospel of Peter, a text that was condemned, buried, and forgotten for centuries. And what it contains might be exactly why it was banned for telling too much. Part 1. The Forbidden Gospel. In the winter of 1886, a French archaeological team made a stunning discovery in a remote Egyptian cemetery. They were excavating the grave of an 8th century Christian monk, and buried with him was a small, fragmented book. It was a piece of a lost gospel, a text whispered about for nearly 1,700 years, but thought to have vanished from history. It was the Gospel of Peter. For centuries, all anyone knew of this text came from the writings of early church fathers who condemned it. Around the year 200 AD, a bishop named Serapion of Antioch wrote about a Christian community in Rosses that was using this very gospel. At first, he allowed it, but after reading it closely, he changed his mind, declaring it contained dangerous additions to the true story and was being pushed by heretics. The book was suppressed, and its secrets were locked away until that day in Egypt. The rediscovered text was a bombshell. Though it was just a fragment, starting mid-trial and ending abruptly after the resurrection, it told the familiar story of Jesus' final days in a profoundly unfamiliar way. It narrates the passion and resurrection with details so cinematic and theologically weird. You can immediately see why it made the early church so uncomfortable. The author, writing as Simon Peter, paints a picture that doesn't just add to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It directly challenges them. And it all leads to a scene at the empty tomb that is unlike anything else in ancient literature. So what was in this gospel that was so dangerous it ended up buried with a forgotten monk? The answer lies in 3 radical details that threatened the tidy narrative of Orthodox Christian belief. Part 2. The Radical Resurrection. The Gospels in the Bible are surprisingly brief about the moment of resurrection itself. The women show up to an empty tomb, and an angel tells them Jesus is risen. We see the aftermath, but not the event. The Gospel of Peter, however, pulls back the curtain and shows you everything. And what it reveals is nothing short of cosmic theater. Revelation number 1. The Talking Cross. The scene opens at the guarded tomb. In this version, it's not just Roman soldiers on watch, but also Jewish elders and scribes, all camped out to make sure nothing happens. They've sealed the tomb with 7 seals, a detail found nowhere else, cranking up the tension and emphasizing their desperation to keep the tomb secure. As the night of the Lord's Day begins, the story explodes. The heavens physically open, and a great voice echoes out. 2 men, glowing with brilliant light, descend from the sky and approach the tomb. The massive stone sealing the entrance rolls aside all by itself. The 2 beings enter. A moment later, the guards witness an even more staggering sight. 3 figures emerge from the tomb. 2 are the angelic beings, supporting a 3rd man. But this is no ordinary man. The heads of the 2 angelic escorts reach to the heavens, but the head of the man they are supporting, Jesus, surpasses the heavens. He has been resurrected as a cosmic giant, a being of immense divine stature. And then comes the strangest detail of all. Following these three figures out of the tomb is the cross itself. It appears to move on its own. Suddenly, a voice calls down from the heavens, asking a question not to Jesus, but to the cross. Have you preached to those who sleep? This likely refers to the tradition of Christ descending to the underworld to preach to the dead. But here, the question is for the instrument of his death. And in the stunned silence, the cross gives its impossible reply. A voice is heard from the cross, answering simply, yes. A cross that emerges from the tomb and speaks. This wasn't just a colorful detail. It was a radical personification of Christianity's central symbol. In the canonical Gospels, the cross is a brutal tool of execution. Here, it's an active, divine participant in salvation. This level of mythological grandeur was way beyond what the Orthodox Church was prepared to accept. Revelation number 2, the named guardian. While a talking cross is the most dramatic twist, another more subtle detail also sets this gospel apart. It gives a name to the Roman centurion in charge of the guard at the tomb, Petronius. This might seem minor, but in ancient storytelling, names have power. The other Gospels leave the centurion anonymous, a faceless symbol of Roman authority. By naming him Petronius, the Gospel of Peter adds a layer of supposed eyewitness authenticity. It grounds the fantastical story in a specific individual, as if to say, this isn't just a tale. A real person named Petronius saw this happen. The Gospel also goes to great lengths to describe how Petronius, his soldiers, and the Jewish elders meticulously sealed the tomb. These details aren't in the other Gospels and create an almost legalistic record of the tomb's security, making the miracle that follows seem even more undeniable. When Petronius and his men report the bizarre events to Pontius Pilate, they become impartial, state-sanctioned witnesses to the resurrection. But this also shifts the blame. In this gospel, Pilate is almost completely let off the hook. It's Herod and the Jewish elders who are the main villains, demanding the crucifixion and later begging Pilate to command the soldiers to keep silent. This strong anti-Jewish bias, shifting blame away from Rome, was another feature that, while present in some second-century Christian writings, diverged sharply from the more nuanced accounts in the canon. Revelation number 3, a different Jesus on the cross. Perhaps the most dangerous part of this gospel, the one that truly sealed its fate, was what it claims happened on the cross. This is where the text veers into a heresy known as Docetism. Docetism comes from the Greek word dokio, meaning to seem or to appear. Docetic Christians believed Jesus was a purely divine being who only appeared to be human. They argued that God, being perfect and spiritual, couldn't truly suffer pain or die in a physical body. To them, Jesus' humanity was just an illusion. The Gospel of Peter is loaded with clues pointing to this belief. When describing the crucifixion, it notes that Jesus remained silent, as though he felt no pain. The implication is clear. He wasn't just being stoic. He was silent because he wasn't really suffering. The final nail in the coffin comes with Jesus' last words. In Matthew and Mark, he cries out in anguish, my God, why have you forsaken me?" But in the Gospel of Peter, the words are crucially different. He cries, my power, you have left me." This isn't a man crying out to his God. This is the divine power, the Christ Spirit, announcing its departure from the human vessel of Jesus right before death. Immediately after, the text doesn't say he died, but that he was taken up. This suggests that the divine essence of Jesus ascended directly from the cross, leaving an empty human shell behind. For Orthodox believers, this was unacceptable. If Jesus didn't truly suffer and die as a human, then his sacrifice wasn't real, and humanity wasn't truly saved. An illusory suffering could only offer an illusory salvation. Part 3. The Crackdown. It was this doucetic theology that ultimately got the gospel blacklisted. When Bishop Serapion investigated the text, he recognized these heretical ideas. While he admitted that much of the gospel lined up with the right teaching of the Savior, the docetic parts were too dangerous to ignore. He wrote against it, and his influence was so great that the Gospel of Peter was effectively banned. The controversy shows us a crucial moment in history: the formation of the New Testament. In the 1st and 2nd centuries, Christianity wasn't a single, unified religion. It was a diverse, sometimes chaotic movement with dozens of competing gospels and beliefs. There were Jewish Christian gospels, Gnostic gospels, and texts like the Gospel of Peter that mixed familiar stories with radical new ideas. The creation of the biblical canon was the early church's attempt to bring order to this chaos. Church leaders and councils worked to define what was orthodox and which texts supported it. They wanted to create a single authoritative story about Jesus, a gospel that featured a talking cross, let the Roman governor off the hook, and suggested Jesus wasn't fully human, simply couldn't be part of that story. It revealed too much about the theological diversity the early church was trying so hard to stamp out, and so it was rejected and left to be forgotten. Conclusion: the discovery of the Gospel of Peter was like finding a secret transcript from the cutting room floor of history. It reveals a version of the resurrection that's wilder, more mythical, and theologically stranger than anything that made it into the final cut of the Bible. It gives us a glimpse of a lost Christianity, one where the line between history and myth was more fluid, and where a talking cross could be a messenger from God. This text is a powerful reminder that the story of early Christianity isn't a straight line, but a messy, vibrant, and often contradictory mix of beliefs. The Bible as we know it wasn't dropped from heaven, fully formed. It was the result of intense debate and theological battles. The books that made it in, and the ones that were cast out, all tell a part of that story. The Gospel of Peter was banned for revealing too much, not just about a giant Jesus or a painless crucifixion, but about the very existence of competing Christian truths. It shows us that for the first followers of Jesus, the story was still being written, and some of its most radical chapters were deliberately torn out. What do you think? Does the existence of texts like the Gospel of Peter change how you view the Bible? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more stories about forbidden history and lost scriptures, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.